Demon AI. Demon AI.
Welcome back to another deep dive. Today we are doing something just a little bit different.
Yeah, we are.
We usually take a really broad topic and, narrow it down. But today we're taking a story that I think a lot of you probably feel like you already know backwards and forwards, the story of Abraham and Sarah.
Right, a classic.
Right, but we're looking at it through a completely different lens today. We're working off this really provocative article by Jamin Bradley. He's a pastor and an author with a pretty heavy focus on social justice.
And he draws on some really fascinating linguistic work by the Bible scholar Tim Mackey.
Yes, which, honestly, it changes the entire texture of the Genesis narrative for me, like completely.
It really is one of those things where once you see the translation nuance, you just can't unsee it. It colors every single interaction in the text from that point on.
It really does. And the hook, for me, the thing that actually got me to read through the whole stack of source material was this detail about the name Hagar.
Oh, yeah.
Because to me, growing up, hearing this, Hagar was always just a name, a proper noun.
Just a character in the story.
Exactly. But Bradley and Mackey point out that if you actually look at the etymology, it's not just a name.
No, it's a description.
Right. If you translate the Hebrew, Hagar, literally into English, her name is the Immigrant.
Which is such a striking detail. Because the authors of these ancient texts, they were incredibly intentional with names.
Oh, for sure.
Names in the ancient Near East usually carried the essence of the person, or like their destiny. So by calling her Hagar, the immigrant, the text is practically grabbing the reader by the shoulders.
It's saying pay attention to this.
Exactly. It's saying, hey, pay attention to how this specific class of person is being treated by the heroes of the story.
And that's what makes this so wild. It stops being this domestic drama about a jealous wife and a handmaid, and it becomes social commentary.
Yeah, a very sharp critique.
It becomes a story about how the people of promise, Abraham and Sarah, interact with the marginalized. And I guess that's the mission for our deep dive today.
Wow.
We aren't doing the sanitized Sunday school hero version.
Not at all.
We are trying to see this narrative through the eyes of the person who has literally no power in the situation.
And fair warning to everyone listening, it's a heavy perspective.
It is.
When you center the story on Hagar, you start seeing things like human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and systemic oppression right there in the text.
But the flip side, and what Bradley argues is the real core aha moment here, is that while the humans in the story completely fail the test, the depiction of God is radically countercultural.
Yeah, the central tension is really about what happens when the good guys become the oppressors.
Right. And more importantly, whose side does God take when that happens?
That's the huge question. Because usually in ancient literature, the gods are on the side of the kings, the wealthy, the winner.
Right, the gods back the powerful. So let's set the stage here. We know her name means the immigrant.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people completely miss how she actually entered the narrative.
Yeah, she didn't just wander into Abraham's camp looking for a job.
No. Bradley highlights that she was likely an acquisition.
Right. And this goes back to a part of Abraham's life that often gets glossed over because it's, frankly, pretty embarrassing for his legacy.
Very.
We really have to look at the Egypt chapter.
This is what the source calls the cowardly decision.
That's the term Bradley uses, and it definitely fits. So earlier in Genesis, there's a famine. Abraham and Sarah go down to Egypt as refugees, essentially.
They're immigrants themselves at this point.
Exactly. And Abraham looks at his wife, Sarah, who is apparently stunningly beautiful, and he does the math. He thinks, if I go in there as her husband, the Egyptians will kill me to get to her. But if I go in as her brother...
I might survive.
Right.
So he just throws her under the bus. He explicitly tells her to lie so that he will be treated well.
And the crazy thing is, it works. In a really dark way, Sarah is taken into Pharaoh's harem, and Abraham is treated like royalty.
Yeah, he's given sheep, cattle, donkeys, servants.
He essentially profits from his wife's sexual vulnerability.
Man, that is a tough pill to swallow regarding the father of the faith.
It really is. Now, eventually the ruse is discovered. Plagues hit Pharaoh's house, and they get kicked out. But, and this is the crucial historical detail here, Abraham leaves Egypt wealthy.
He keeps the stuff.
He leaves with all those gifts. And the implication, historically and textually, is that Hagar was part of that wealth.
Wow.
She was an Egyptian slave given to Abraham as payment during the time he was effectively pimping out his wife.
So Hagar's very presence in their camp is this living reminder of Abraham's moral failure.
Yes.
She's not just a servant, she's a receipt.
She's a receipt for his cowardice. She's property acquired through deception.
Yeah.
So the power dynamic from day one is just incredibly toxic.
You have an Egyptian in a Hebrew household.
A slave among free people.
And a woman with zero status, which sets up the next major violation we need to talk about. Because we usually talk about the surrogacy plan as this desperate, maybe almost sympathetic move by Sarah.
Right. The traditional reading is that she's infertile, she's sad, she wants a legacy, so she comes up with a plan.
But Bradley uses much starker language for this.
Mm.
He calls it turning the newly acquired immigrant into a sex slave of sorts.
It's really uncomfortable language, but if you look at the mechanics of the story, it's accurate.
Yeah.
In the ancient Near East, infertility was a massive stigma. It was considered a curse. So Sarah comes up with a solution that relies entirely on exploiting the body of the person below her.
It's very Code of Hammurabi style thinking, isn't it? Like the law explicitly allowed for a wife to give a slave to her husband to produce heirs.
It was legal, yes, but legal doesn't mean moral, and it certainly doesn't mean humane.
Right.
The text actually says Sarah took Hagar. It doesn't say she asked Hagar.
Which took her.
She took her and gave her to Abraham. It's a purely economic transaction. The goal was to use Hagar's womb to build Sarah's house.
Because the child wouldn't even belong to Hagar, technically. The child creates lineage for the masters.
Exactly.
It's treating a human being purely as a biological resource. Like, we need a baby, you have the parts, you work for us.
And you really have to notice the passivity of Abraham here, too.
Oh, yeah. He just goes right along with it.
He doesn't say, hey, maybe we shouldn't exploit this vulnerable woman. He just benefits from the system.
So naturally, this whole thing blows up.
Yeah.
You can't strip someone of their humanity and expect a happy family dinner afterward.
No.
The text mentions there was contempt between the women.
Because Hagar conceives, and suddenly the power dynamic shifts just slightly. She has something Sarah doesn't.
Right.
Sarah feels slighted, blames Abraham for the tension, and then begins to treat Hagar so harshly that Hagar decides to flee.
And I really want to pause on the fleeing part. Because we read she fled into the wilderness. And as modern readers, we might picture, I don't know, a hike.
Right, running away from home.
But in that region, in that era, a pregnant woman running into the desert alone.
It's suicide.
Yeah.
It's a measure of just how horrific the abuse at home must have been. She preferred the likelihood of dying of thirst and exposure over staying one more day in the tent of the people of God.
That is just a damning indictment. But this is where the story completely pivots. Because up until now, Abraham and Sarah are the protagonists of the Bible.
Right.
They're the chosen ones.
They hold the promise.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you would expect God to show up and say to Hagar, hey, get back there and submit to my servants.
Right, because that's how ancient tribal religions usually worked. The God protects the tribe no matter what.
But this is where the God of Genesis breaks the mold. He meets Hagar the immigrant out in the wilderness.
And Bradley makes a huge point here that this is a theophany.
A visible manifestation of God.
Yes. Hagar is one of the few women in the entire Old Testament to have a direct one-on-one encounter with the divine like this.
God doesn't go to Abraham in the tent. He goes to the abused slave in the ditch.
And the name she gives God in that moment is incredible. Elroy.
The God who sees.
It is such a brilliant contrast. Abraham and Sarah saw her as a tool, as property, but God sees her as a person.
And the source material emphasizes that this seeing implies hearing as well. I mean, Bradley's article is literally titled The God Who Hears, because the text says God has heard her misery.
It's a total validation of her pain. Now, he doesn't fix the situation instantly. He actually tells her to go back, which is a whole other complex theological knot to untangle, but he promises her that she is not forgotten.
He promises that her son will have a future. He gives her back her dignity.
Exactly.
So she does go back. She has the baby, Ishmael. But the cycle of toxicity, it doesn't end there.
Not at all.
Years go by, Isaac is finally born to Sarah, and now we have a real rivalry. And this leads to what Bradley calls the deportation.
It's a very modern word to use, but the parallels are undeniable.
Oh, completely.
Sarah basically decides she is done. She sees Ishmael playing with Isaac, and some translations suggest mocking, but the Hebrew is ambiguous. It might just mean playing, and she just snaps. She demands that Abraham cast them out.
Get rid of the slave woman and her son.
And Abraham does it. Now, the text says he was distressed about it, but he still complies. And the provision he gives them is shockingly meager. The source article really highlights this. He gives them some bread and a skin of water.
Just a skin of water.
Yeah.
For a journey into the desert? That's practically nothing.
He's a very wealthy man. He has flocks, herds, servants, camels. He could have sent them with a caravan.
Right.
He could have sent them with a donkey and supplies. Instead, he hands them a sack lunch and points them toward the wasteland.
It's a passive death sentence.
It really is.
And it nearly works. They wander until the water runs out. There's that gut-wrenching scene where Hagar puts the boy under a bush because she just can't bear to watch him die.
It's heart-wrenching. She walks a bow shot away and just weeps. It's the total loss of hope. But again, look at the pattern here. Human systems fail her, the heroes fail her, but God intervenes a second time.
The God who hears the boy crying.
He opens her eyes to a well, he provides for them. But here is the key takeaway from Bradley on this second encounter. God blesses them outside of Abraham's system.
Oh, that's huge.
He liberates them. He makes Ishmael into a great nation, completely independent of the covenant line. It's God saying, my blessing isn't limited to the people who hold the power.
Okay, so that's the narrative arc of Hagar. But the part of this deep dive that really blew my mind, like the part where I had to set the notes down and just stare at the wall for a minute, is the big picture connection regarding this cycle of oppression.
Yeah, the irony of history here is staggering.
Yes. Because Bradley and Mackey point out that this isn't just a random event. The timing is super suspicious. This mistreatment of the immigrant happens right after God gives Abraham a very specific prophecy in Genesis 15.
Right. God tells Abraham, effectively, know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years.
So Abraham knows. He has been explicitly told by God that his own family is going to be the vulnerable immigrant class.
He knows his lineage is destined for oppression.
And then, almost immediately, he turns around and oppresses the vulnerable immigrant in his own kitchen. It's a massive failure of the Golden Rule before the Golden Rule was even written.
Right.
You would think that knowing your future involves suffering would make you empathetic to those suffering now, but it didn't. Abraham completely failed to connect the dots between his family's future destiny and Hagar's present reality.
It's a blind spot the size of a continent. But Bradley traces this blind spot further down the family tree. And this is where we get to Joseph.
The Joseph connection is where this cycle really solidifies. Most of us think of Joseph as the good guy.
The Technicolor Dreamcoat guy.
Exactly, the guy who saves his family from starvation. And he does do those things, but Bradley challenges us to look at his political policy.
Because Joseph ends up running Egypt.
Yeah.
He's second in command.
He rises from prisoner to prime minister. And when the famine hits the same famine that brings his brothers to Egypt, Joseph is in charge of the food supply. Now look at how he manages it. The people are starving.
Sure.
They come to Joseph for grain.
And he sells it to them.
First, he takes their money. When the money runs out, he takes their livestock. When the livestock is gone, he takes their land.
Wow.
And finally, when they have absolutely nothing left, the people say, buy us and our land in exchange for food, and we and our land will be in bondage to Pharaoh.
So Joseph systematically transfers all the wealth and freedom of the Egyptian populace to the Pharaoh. He effectively turns the citizenry into serfs.
He creates a state-run system of slavery. He centralizes power so absolutely that the people have no autonomy left. And remember, Joseph himself had been a slave.
Right.
He knew the pain of being property, yet when he got power, he didn't dismantle the system, he perfected it.
That is so dark.
And here's the kicker. The historical irony that leads directly into the book of Exodus. Joseph dies. A new pharaoh comes along who, the text says, does not know Joseph.
But he inherits the system Joseph built.
Exactly. He inherits a centralized, total control state. And the Egyptians. They have been stripped of their land and rights by this Hebrew administrator. They are likely incredibly resentful.
So when the text says the Egyptians enslaved the Hebrews,
it's a reversal. The system Joseph built to enslave the Egyptians was eventually turned against his own people.
the oppressed became the oppressor, created the machinery of slavery, and then got caught in the gears of that exact same machine generations later.
It's a complete cycle.
Abraham abuses the immigrant. His great-grandson enslaves a nation. And then that nation enslaves Abraham's descendants. It's like the text is practically screaming at us. If you do not break the cycle of oppression, it will eventually come for you.
It challenges the whole idea that suffering automatically teaches us empathy. Sometimes suffering just teaches us how to wield power more ruthlessly once we finally get it.
Yeah.
The lesson of Hagar was lost on Abraham. It was lost on Joseph. And the result was 400 years of slavery.
Which brings us to the application for today. Because Bradley isn't just doing a history lesson here in his article. He makes the claim that Hagar lives among us.
He draws a direct line to the modern immigrant experience. He argues that there are millions of people today who fit the Hagar profile. Displaced, vulnerable, used for their labor but denied their dignity, often separated from their children.
And the scary part for the religious listener, or really anyone in a position of privilege, is the theological implication. If God is the God who hears the cry of Hagar,
Then he is hearing the cry of the migrant worker today. He is hearing the cry of the refugee. And if the pattern of the Bible holds true, God is not neutral. He is actively paying attention to the people on the margins.
Bradley puts it pretty bluntly. He asks if we're the people of promise who have become blind.
That's the mirror he holds up. We like to see ourselves as the heroes. We identify with Abraham, we identify with the chosen people, but the text really forces us to ask, are we actually the Egyptians? Are we the ones benefiting from a system that exploits the Hagars?
It totally disrupts that comfortable notion that God is always on our side.
Because God isn't loyal to a nation state or an ethnic group in these texts. He's loyal to justice. When the heroes act like villains, God leaves the camp to go find the victim in the desert.
I think that's what makes this deep dive so unsettling, but also so necessary. It suggests that you can have the right theology, you can have the promises, and you can still be the bad guy in someone else's story if you aren't careful.
And not just the bad guy, but the architect of your own eventual downfall. The cycle doesn't stop until someone decides to treat the immigrant as a human being rather than an acquisition.
So as we wrap up today, let's look at the arc we've traced. We started with a name, Hagar, the immigrant. We saw how she was brought in as a product of a cowardly decision, used as a surrogate and a system that dehumanized her, and then deported when she became inconvenient.
And we saw God step in as El Roy, the one who sees, validating her existence completely outside of the human power structure.
And then we saw the devastating cost of ignoring that lesson. The failure to treat the immigrant with dignity rippled down through Joseph and ended up enslaving the very family that was supposed to be a blessing to the world.
It's a huge cautionary tale about power. It's a warning that how you treat the most vulnerable person in your orbit is the truest test of your character and potentially the determinant of your future.
Bradley ends his piece with a prayer that we would listen. And I think that's the ultimate challenge here. It's about listening to the cries that maybe we've been tuning out because they're inconvenient.
It's about noticing who is out in the wilderness while we are sitting comfortably in the tent.
I want to leave you with a thought to mull over this week. We talked a lot about blind spots today. Abraham had a massive one. Joseph had a massive one. They were so convinced of their own righteousness that they couldn't see the oppression they were causing.
And they were the good guys.
Exactly. So here is the uncomfortable question. If the heroes of the faith could be blind to the Hagar right in front of them, who is the Hagar in your life right now? Who is the person or the group of people that you might be viewing as a resource or an annoyance or just a political issue rather than a human being crying out to a God who hears?
That is a question worth sitting with.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.
Take care.
In the dust of Abraham's tent, a whisper wandered, a stranger in the tent, called by a name unknown. The immigrant, a ghost in promise's shadow, fleeing sorrow's edge with bread and water warm, and the heavens lean low to hear the cry no one resisted. Where exile bleeds in midnight's hollow, the wind carries every unspoken plea. And the God who hears the immigrant, he sees what others never see. He lifts the outcast in the wilderness, calls them by mercy's seat. Oh, in the silence of the broken, His heart resounds like thunder, for every exile's tear is heard. Abraham saw fear, yet the Lord saw a story of wandering hearts, unwelcomed yet beloved. In the wilderness where suffering gathers footprints, God becomes the wellspring of hope among the dust, and He speaks. You are seen, you are heard, you are called. From Egypt's sands to the new world border, the cry is the same. Do not forget the stranger, for I was wandering too, and mercy bends the lows to the weight of human pain. Oh, the God who hears the immigrant, His name on every breath, in every story of life.